ministers in the cabinet, across all 17 that sit in cabinet. But he did have the good grace to at least admit that the Let to Buy scheme had failed. It was inflationary. That the housing crisis, that the Rebuilding Ireland hasn't worked. So look, the housing crisis. There's still huge issues around banking, around mortgages, around the cost of living, around inflation, around rents. They're all related, really.
So why on earth are you facilitating them?
So there are issues in government all the time. We would love to be in government. We would love to put Micheál Martin as Taoiseach and put a Fianna Fáil pitch to the people. We did that in the last election. We had a very good election, but a bit like Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, we had an extremely good election, far better than anybody predicted. But unfortunately, we didn't win. And we didn't get the most seats. We ended up as second place in the Parliament. Notwithstanding that, we did try on 3 occasions over a period of about 3 months. The public were getting very frustrated, as were we. We did try to elect Micheál Martin as Taoiseach. We looked to other parties, smaller parties, independents for support. It wasn't forthcoming. What I'm hearing between the lines since is that that situation may change next time round.
Yeah, you're doing well in the opinion polls.
We're doing well, and we're also hearing other smaller parties that maybe didn't look to us the last time, maybe regret that now.
Right, so go for an election.
Well, look, I think that I think the difficulty there, personally I have no problem, I think, going to the people at any time, but I think that the difficulty is if there are crises in government all the time, as there have been a number of disappointments with this particular government. Cumulatively they add up, and if and when an election is called, the people will have their chance to pass judgment on those matters, whether the election is now, whether it's 3 months time, 6 months time, 12 months time. I don't actually know when the next election is going to be, but I do know every time the government drops the ball, we will be there to point it out, to highlight it, to say what could and should have been done differently.
And you will continue to facilitate the So basically what you're doing is speaking out of both sides of your mouth here, because on the one hand you can jump up and down and criticise, and on the other side of your mouth you can facilitate Fine Gael to continue implementing policies that you call arrogant.
Okay, we have to, well actually no, because in terms of their policies, their manner is arrogant, their behaviour I think is we've seen cronyism resurrected again with this new appointment, so the behaviour is inappropriate. They have an arrogant manner. Their policies, as in, say, the budgetary policy, when they passed a budget last year, was heavily underwritten by Fianna Fáil in terms of what the content that was in it, what kind of strategies they employed in terms of investment in public services, which we demanded. Micheál Martin has already met with Taoiseach Radker to lay down the line in terms of, again, those kind of public sector
laying down the
priorities. In terms of, if we do not see those kind of policies implemented in the budget, there's no way, and for the record, we don't actually support it, but there's no way we'll even facilitate another budget. So in terms of the brass tacks, the bread and butter, the financial investment, in terms of where the money goes, in terms of things like the rainy day fund that Leo wants to tear up and turn into an election slush fund, we're not going to allow that to happen. But the daily crises, the weekly crises of government, these kind of things like the Attorney General at the moment, the mismanner for appointment, if you're to pull the government down at every time, then what happens to your parliament, what happens to your government? What kind of stability do you create?
I need to stop you there, because you're making it seem like that you don't want to sort of stop them at every mini crisis every week. These aren't mini crises though, because those two things you mentioned are in the Fianna Fáil Fine Gael agreement. Number 1 on the Fianna Fáil Fine Gael agreement, establish a rainy day fund. Leo says there is no fund. Number 2, establish a judicial appointments commission. This is a direct quote, to identify the most suitable candidates for judicial office. Enda Kenny was elected Taoiseach 6th of May. It's now the 19th of June. There are 2 things that you agreed with Fine Gael that haven't come in.
Yeah. Well, sorry, there actually is a rainy day fund. There's 2.5 billion put aside by Michael Noonan. Charlie McCreevy, actually, our own Kildare man, started that. People often said there was no money put aside. There was 18 billion put aside in the boom time. So there certainly was.
Leo's being dismissive of it.
And he was being, I think it was a very sensible, prudent fiscal move. All the different international bodies would agree. Any plain housekeeping, you put a few pence in the piggy bank for a rainy day. It's just common sense. Leo is saying let's get rid of it, and maybe he wants to have an election slush fund. That's probably what he's up to. And Micheál has said very clearly, we're not going to allow that. We're plainly not going to allow that. Again, with this judicial appointment,
but
leadership level.
With the judicial appointment, you are allowing it to happen. So this is why I come back to speaking out of both sides of your mouth, because you say we're not going to allow this, we're not going to allow that. On the 6th of May, the government was formed here. One of the things in the Fianna Fáil Fine Gael agreement is establish a judicial appointments commission to identify the most suitable candidates for judicial office. Here we are, 13, 14 months later, and we have the Attorney General moved into this role. So you are allowing it to happen. It's not that you're not allowing it.
We will be voting against the government's judicial appointments bill next week. Okay, we are not.
She is in the Court of Appeals from today.
Well, if that goes ahead and
She's gone to the park this
probably
morning.
will. Yeah, and I think that's the height of
So
our
just to be clear, when you say to people Fianna Fáil are not allowing these things to happen, you actually are. So why don't you just admit that?
Okay, Shane, can I be very clear? We are not allowing my party leader has stated we will not allow the rainy day fund to be thrown aside.
You
right,
are
number one.
allowing sometimes unsuitable people to get into
There
judicial
are
office.
crises. The government has dirtied its bib on many occasions. There are these kind of crises that break. We will hold them to account. We will
But you're actually not, because the agreement is between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael,
we will highlight.
and they have broken this agreement.
Okay, there's nothing, unfortunately, in the agreement to say that you cannot stroke a crony into a job. Okay, unfortunately, there's nothing that says
Your
that in the
agreement
agreement.
says you
In
intend
actual
to-
fact, the most relevant part of the agreement to that is the no
agreement
surprises clause. The no surprises clause has been broken here. If you want to talk about the agreement, let's at least get it right. We're talking about the no surprises clause. Okay, that's the fundamental, and that's the spirit of the law, if not the letter of the law, that's been broken here. So it's the no surprises piece. And what Taoiseach Radcliffe is trying to say, this isn't a surprise and blah blah. I don't agree with that. It is a surprise. It's breaking the spirit, if not the letter of the agreement. Now, my party leader spoke to Taoiseach Radcliffe last night. He expressed his deep unease and unhappiness at the manner of this
And Leo said
it
that's
will be discussed further
grand.
tomorrow. There will be a party meeting on Wednesday.
No, see, you can't say this to the Irish people, because that's fine.
But I don't know what's going to happen in the next week. I'm not
she's
going to
going
predict
to
the
the
next.
park this morning.
Indeed, she is. But what's going to happen? In terms of the wider political landscape, I can't predict what the next couple of days going to be.
point
But
would
I am
be-
telling you, we're not going to tear down the government at every opportunity. Because if we did, we'd be in a
So
pretty
why
huge
don't
instability.
you just rip up the agreement with Fine Gael then and just allow
sorry,
them to do whatever they want?
Well, what would be the point in doing that? We have to exercise our
for
mandate. It's not
example-
as large a mandate as we would have liked. We're the
Another
second
part.
largest party in the law. We're not the largest party.
Right.
If we were the largest party, we would be in government now. This would be over. If people want to get rid of this, and I certainly want to get rid of it, there's a very simple solution. Give us more votes and more seats next time. We wouldn't have this mess. Saying the outset, the housing crisis is still the number one. And
Your agreement from 13 months ago.
Yeah, our agreement is
the housing crisis 13 months later is worse than ever.
If people understand, people enter into agreements, and those agreements have a term, right, that there's one, whether it's electing an officer to a club, whether it's an agreement about a government or a facilitation of government, whether it's a contract agreement between two companies, you enter into an agreement that a number of things will be done over a fixed term. The agreement that Fianna Fáil entered into was a 3-year agreement. We are now, actually not even 12 months into it, because the government was formed
Okay,
around
so
the time
just
last
to
year.
be clear then, to give Fianna Fáil the positive spin here, what has this agreement achieved in the last 12 months?
Okay. It is achieved. If we look at the budgetary strategy of the last...
You're going to lose people when you say that, first of all.
3-to-1 investment in public spending, okay?
Yeah.
So in terms of public spending, in terms of the health services, in terms of the Gardaí, in terms of the education system, Fine Gael wanted the money to go into tax cuts for the higher earners. It was very clear in that manifesto. Cut the USC, cut the top rate of tax for the people at the very top of the ladder. The people who already arguably don't really need a tax cut. That was Fine Gael's written policy going into the last election. Fianna Fáil tore that up and said, no way, we're not going to stand over that. We want that money reversed, and anything that comes back in the exchequer goes back into public services. That money on a ratio of 3-to-1 has gone back into the public service in terms of investment in health, investment in education, investment in crime detection and fighting crime.
The more people on trolleys than ever.
Well, maybe it's not managed correctly.
Look, housing crisis. And just my question was, what has the achievement been of the Fianna Fáil Fine Gael agreement in the last year?
The achievement has been in terms of budgetary strategy that the budget has invested more. That if you look at how the budget was ran, where the money was put. In terms of rebuilding Ireland, okay, the strategy is not perfect. We think it hasn't worked as well as it should. Do you think that Fine Gael would have ever put a social housing policy together without Fianna Fáil? It's not Corfu, it's not Fine Gael, it's not how they do their business. All these issues, all these items are on the government agenda because we put them there. They're not being tackled as fully or as quickly as we would have liked. There is a 3-year term of office. Obviously, we would hope if we were in the position that we would be doing these things a lot more fully, a lot more speedily, but we're not there. So what we're trying to do from opposition
there if you went for an election.
Well, we could, or we could be, or we could be back to the same, or a version of the same. We could be back to more or less the same thing. A couple more numbers here, a couple of numbers there. Who knows? But if you enter into a 3-year agreement, there is some kind of integrity that you at least try to honour that agreement, and you at least try to give some let it run its course, or even partially its course. And we're about a year into a 3-year agreement. If we start to pull down the edifice at this stage, would the public thank us for it? Some people probably would love an election. Personally, I have no problem ever going to an election because I think you're held accountable on your work. But in terms of the national scene, I think in terms of trying to attract investment into the country, in terms of dealing with Brexit, the biggest challenge to this country in the last 50 years, and the next 50 years probably, in terms of dealing with things like the common consolidation tax bases coming out of Europe in terms of President Trump trying to win back corporate investment. Is it a good idea that we enter into a period of instability with election after election after election? I don't think it is. Frankly, I don't think it is. I think it's better for the country to have a sure footing and move forward and give some kind of certainty to those kind of international investors and to our own domestic scene. Any business people I talk to, people that are out and about in the marketplace, they don't want an election. They don't want the thing ripped up. They want government to work for them, sure, but they want some kind of certainty about it.
Is that government working for them?
I don't think it is, personally. I don't think it is. Shane, again, I'll go back to the numbers. We won, and delighted that we did, we won 44 seats in the last election. Fine Gael won 50. I wish we won 84. We wouldn't have to worry about any of this stuff. And I'd say, if people want to change that, it's a very easy answer. Go and vote Fianna Fáil the next time.
Mary Mitchell O'Connor talked that she's going to get a €16,000 pay rise to become a super junior minister. Legislation will have to be changed, I understand, because we're only allowed to have 2 super juniors. Now there'll be a third. What's Fianna Fáil's view on that? I presume you'll just give out, but you'll still endorse it, will you?
Well,
are you going to vote against it?
We are going to vote against it, yeah. Shane, I'm in the Dáil now about 14 months. I have voted against the government. I think I've voted over 100 times. I think I've probably voted 80 times against the government. I think on probably 3 or 4 occasions I've abstained with the government, and maybe a dozen times I've voted with the government. So just in case people think that we're trotting into the Dáil every day that we voting with the government, that's not the case, not at all. And people deride new politics and say, what is new politics? New politics is actually letting the Parliament do its work. It's allowing TDs like me, individual new TDs of all parties in the House, go into the Dáil with the proposal. I've gone in with proposals. I've talked to Richard Bard, I've talked to Sinn Féin, I've talked to the Labour Party, and I've talked to the government, and I've got them to support motions that I put forward. And every other TD is entitled to do that as well. And that's a good parliamentary system. But it means the government doesn't always win. The government loses as often as it wins. And that's normal. And that doesn't bring the House down as people are learning. It's actually a good way to do it. But on the specific question, Mary Mitchell O'Connor, we will certainly be voting against this. Yes, we will. Because we don't feel that there's a need. First of all, I don't see, this is an internal Fine Gael wrangle. This is Taoiseach Radcliffe at his first test failing. He invited her into his office to explain to her she was being demoted. She threw a strop, apparently. She didn't take it kindly. He then offered her a compensation prize of a junior ministry in the Justice Department.
Super junior.
Super junior. Oh, she didn't want that either because it wasn't, I'm not sure what was wrong with it actually. I think it's a hugely important area. But she didn't want it. She stormed out of the office. An hour later, he backed down. He rang her and said, look, I'm going to offer you a super junior in education. Now, education, people may not be aware, already has 2 ministers, and it has Minister Richard Bruton and it has Junior Minister John Halligan, who I happen to mark in the Dáil. It doesn't really, I mean, look, of course, investment in education is important.
So is this a personal attack on Mary Mitchell O'Connor? Do you not think she's good enough?
Education is a hugely important area. I don't think that education or any other area deserves a ministry made up on the hoof as a compensation prize to a minister who got thick because they didn't get the appointment that they wanted. I think that's an insult to the sector, frankly. I have marked Minister Mitchell O'Connor also as the senior minister in the area. I don't think she was good at the job. I'm being very straight about it. Professionally, nothing. Personally, she's a very nice lady. We got on personally very fine.
If someone else had been offered this, would you feel the same way?
Absolutely. You don't make up a ministry on the hoof. You do not make up a super junior ministry on the hoof. I mean, it flies in the face of any kind of good governance. And for Taoiseach Radcliffe to come in with all this fanfare,
Fianna Fáil brought in an awful lot of junior ministries.
Not on the hoof. You don't make up a ministry in the space of 35 minutes on a phone call.
Sorry, Fianna Fáil created a lot of junior ministries.
There were a number of ministries created under the Bertie Ahern government. Brian Cowan got rid of them. Brian Cowan got rid of them as soon as he got in. So you can take your own conclusions from that. Brian Cowan did reduce them back significantly, and they've remained back. And then against Fine Gael started bumping them up again. But the point here is not about whether you have many ministries you have or don't have many junior ministries. The point is that Taoiseach Radcliffe, on the space of a 35-minute conversation with Mary Mitchell O'Connor, backed down twice. He offered a super junior in justice, and then again offered a super junior made up on the fly in education. Now, they're looking to put her in cabinet. They want to put her in cabinet. That means they have to create an extra super junior. There are already 2. There is Minister Keogh for Defence, and the Finney McGrath, who was there as a sub to the Independent Alliance, because they're a coalition with the government and they need to get their man on the table. So they've got 2, and the Chief Whip. That's actually 3. There is nothing in legislation or the Constitution to permit any more. It's already a stretch actually to have 3. It's already more than would normally be there. Now, the Taoiseach Radcliffe wants to have 4. He wants to add an extra one to the mix, just to keep his own Fine Gael people happy. He's going to have another big disappointment next week, by the way, with the junior ministries being announced, because he made so many promises during the campaign. There's no way he can give them all jobs, and that's a difficulty for him now. We are not going to allow the public purse to subsidise that. We're not going to allow an internal Fine Gael wrangle be turned into a charge on the public purse. So we're going to vote against the legislation. The idea that Minister Mitchell O'Connor can walk into cabinet and a new position created specifically for her, made up on the fly, and vote through legislation to give enactment to it and give her a 16 grand pay rise on top of the 121 124 that she already gets is preposterous. Right. It's insulting.
But
we will be voting against that.
Well, yeah, but she will still be the minister. It just means she won't get the 16 grand.
Well, that's probably what's going to happen. She won't get the pay rise, but she'll still be doing the job. As I've already tabled a question to the Taoiseach to ask him how exactly is this going to work. We have Minister Halligan in terms of skills, training and innovation. We have Minister Bruton in charge of education. Where exactly does Minister Michelle O'Connor sit into this picture? It's really very unclear. And there's huge issues in the sector. Everything from the universities, in terms of international rankings, in terms of the recent primetime programme about some of the DITs, the ITs around the country having different irregularities, in terms of how we train, in terms of funding for higher education, in terms of the CASA's report, is it student loans or what system are we going to use to fund the sector, in terms of research and development. And we're falling down. We had jumped up the scale. We've really talented young people and people in the universities. We've really jumped up the scale in the last 15, 20 years. We've actually slipped back because we haven't been investing there. Okay. So where does this sit? And making up a minister on the fly and throwing someone in to keep them happy and turn the thing again wrangling is not the way to solve that problem.
Should Step Aside Garda Station reopen?
Step Aside Garda Station, any Garda station should reopen if the logic stacks up, if the crime statistics in the area match it, and if the need is seen to be there. I would make the case just as forcefully that Kill Garda Station should reopen. You could say the same for Ballymore. You could say the same for any station in the country. I have made that point for Kill Garda Station. I'm not an independent minister in the government holding the government to ransom over whether Minister Ross, who was the champion of fair play, and he actually literally wrote the book on cronyism, has now turned around.
You mean you think he's acting?
Absolutely. Minister Ross had a banner up outside his, I'm sure you saw it on social media, he had a banner up outside the Step Aside Garda Station with his face all over it the morning of the cabinet meeting to say Step Aside reopen, hooray, 3 cheers for Minister Ross. This man was supposed to be the champion, stamping out all that kind of skullduggery. It appears hugely coincidental, to say the least, that despite his campaign against judges being appointed in kind of dodgy ways, that all of a sudden Step Aside Garda Station reopened on the very same day that a judicial stroke happened, and he was bought off with this, or he was silenced with this, it appears. So Step Aside Garda Station, look, I have no difficulty. If Step Aside Garda Station, I don't know the crime stats around Step Aside. Fianna Fáil were opposed at the time to closing all these rural Garda stations. I had campaign meetings in Kill and Ballymore at the time. I would feel very strongly that there's a whole area there, around the kind of West Wicklow, East Kildare, right down through Kill, right down through Ballymore, up around Easttown, Kilteal, Rathmore, even over to Clock and down along the N7 there, Castlewarden, that is being rifled now really because it's very easy to come in on the motorway, hit rural areas, go into burglaries and back on the road again. There's no local knowledge, there's no local Garda presence. I think that area suffered from the closure of that Garda station, so I would certainly be in favour of opening more Garda stations, but reopening Garda stations, but reopening one Garda station in the whole country the morning of a cabinet meeting that independent Minister Ross happens to be his pet project is pure strokeism again, and it's very disappointing to see that happening.
But you'll continue to facilitate the government?
Shane, until we get more seats, until we're in a position to form our own government, which I hope will come soon, we are in a situation where we have to stand back and say, how does parliamentary democracy work? We can facilitate the government from opposition, and we can vote against them on many number of things, but unfortunately we don't have the numbers as it stands to put them out of office. But let's hope that day comes soon.
Well, you won't go for an election either, so it's not going to come soon.
Well, let's see what happens the next week. I'm not saying what's going to happen.
Why? Could there be an election?
There could be an election at any time, of course.
Well, why are you saying in the next week?
Well, I mean, we're going to have a parliamentary party on Wednesday. We're going to have various discussions. These are evolving situations, Shane. There's no black and white here. There's no, this is it, no discretion and no further. There's a parliamentary party, there's a front bench meeting tomorrow, there's a parliamentary party on Wednesday. There's another week in the Dáil. We'll be raising this issue on Tuesday morning. There's questions. There's various questions. I've tabled questions to the Taoiseach and Mary Michelle O'Connor. So let's see what happens. I'm not really anything in or out. I think, being honest, I think that it's not a sensible or constructive strategy to continually pull the plug, because if we do that, I go back to the uncertainty I talked about and everything with Brexit and Trump and everything else in the international landscape. We don't want uncertainty. Okay. Having said that, I'm not ruling anything in or out.
Okay, you have 30 seconds. I'm way over time. Can you tell me about the Midsummer Festival in Naas very briefly, and we will come back to it later in the week as well.
So this coming weekend, starting Thursday night in the Moat Theatre at 6 o'clock, we have our launch, running through Thursday, Friday, Saturday and into Sunday. We have the Midsummer Arts Festival. I'm chair of the festival. We set it up 2 years ago. It's our second run of the festival. Festival. It's for the arts, music, creative industry, I suppose, locally. It's open to all, fun for all the family. We'll be down by the harbour on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, in Popper Square, in the town hall at night, also on Sands. A number of gigs, a number of different fun activities. It should be a great weekend. It's a 4-day weekend. Trying to put a bit of life back into the town, and it's also, as I say, a focal point for families. If we get this kind of weather, it's going to be a great weekend. Looking forward to it.
Great stuff, magical. We'll come back to that later in the week. James Lawless, thank you.
Riley Super Value.